Tonight, in a time of war, an Army sergeant is accused of running a kill team that murdered Afghan civilians just for the thrill of it. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, new danger along the Mexican border. American college students murdered, caught in the crossfire of the drug war. And that battle goes high-tech, with U.S. agents deploying the same weapons used in Afghanistan. Plus, the doctor who's ready to die for her patients. She stood up to Somali warlords and won.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. American commanders in Afghanistan have repeatedly said protecting civilians is a top priority. But 5 U.S. soldiers stand accused of shocking crimes that include murdering Afghans for sport. Today near Seattle, the alleged ringleader appeared at a military hearing to determine if there's enough evidence for a court-martial. David Martin at the Pentagon has been following this story, and a warning, some of the details are quite graphic.
Staff Sergeant Calvin Gibbs on patrol in Afghanistan 3 days after he allegedly orchestrated the murder of an Afghan civilian. If the charges are true, he used those medical shears tucked into the top of his flak jacket to cut off fingers as trophies.
He's crazy. There's something wrong with that guy. And I've seen him kill, I know he's killed dudes.
Specialist Jeremy Morlock, who is accused of taking part in 3 murders earlier this year, made that statement to Army investigators as he described Gibbs's actions.
Pulled out one of his grenades, American grenade, popped it, throws the grenade, and then, tells me Winfield, all right, dude, whack this guy, kill this guy.
Winfield is Specialist Adam Winfield, who admitted to being a member of Gibbs's kill team.
That's what he called it, kill team.
What did he mean by that?
He meant that he was going to kill people.
Winfield, too, is charged with murder.
It's pretty much the worst thing I've ever done in my life.
Looking back, was there any way that shooting could have been justified at all?
No.
Winfield claimed he was too afraid of Gibbs to blow the whistle.
What do you think he would do?
I think he would kill me.
And why do you think that?
He said it. He said if anyone ever ratted on them, he would kill them.
Another soldier, Emmett Quintal, told investigators what happened when a private named Stoner blew the whistle on drug use in the squad.
Gibbs sat down casually and told Stoner that if he snitched again, he would kill him, and that he has killed people before and he has no problems killing again. At that time, Staff Sergeant Gibbs had a cloth. He opened it and dropped it, and 3 human body fingers fell on the ground.
And yes, there are pictures of soldiers posing with the bodies of their victims. The Army is doing everything it can to keep those photos from becoming public. Katie?
Meanwhile, David, what kind of defense is Gibbs' legal team mounting?
Well, Gibbs's attorney says that these were all legitimate combat operations and that those statements by those soldiers are not going to stand up under cross-examination.
And David, let's talk about the other big story at the Pentagon, that mysterious sight over the Pacific Ocean captured by a KCBS helicopter last night. Was it a missile, and what are officials there at the Pentagon saying about it?
Well, experts have spent the entire day trying to figure out what it was. The Department of Defense spends billions of dollars each year to make sure it's never surprised by a missile launch, so this had everybody's attention. They have determined that it did not travel fast enough or have a big enough exhaust plume to be a military missile fired either by the U.S. or some other country. They now believe it was either an airplane or an amateur rocket.
All right, well, keep us posted on that. David Martin. David, thanks so much. Now turning to Mexico and that country's brutal drug war, which has claimed at least 28,000 lives in the past 4 years alone. The epicenter is Juarez, a city separated from El Paso, Texas by the Rio Grande and connected by the Bridge of the Americas. And Don Teague reports the latest victims of the drug violence are American students.
Amazing grace.
Mourning at the University of Texas El Paso, where friends and family gathered Monday to remember 2 students who were ambushed and murdered while driving in neighboring Juarez, Mexico.
We will miss your unique charm and cherish the moments.
These are great men, great people that wanted to achieve something, want to be something in life.
23-year-old Ider Diaz and 25-year-old Manuel Acosta, who are both U.S. citizens, lived with their families in Juarez, just a few miles from campus. They are the second and third UTEP students killed in the city this year. Their deaths bring the total number of Americans murdered there last week to 6. UTEP is one of the safest urban colleges in the nation. It sits right in the middle of one of America's safest cities. But at least 1,400 of the students here don't live in El Paso. They live across the border in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Among them, this UTEP senior, so afraid of the violence at home, she does not want us to reveal her identity. She spends each school day safely in the U.S., then returns to a city that's had nearly 2,700 murders this year alone.
I cannot quit coming to school. I have to do it every day, so I just leave it all in the hands of God.
UTEP and other Texas universities now restrict official travel to Mexico, but students who live there don't have a choice.
You can be the victim of a kidnapping, a carjacking, a theft, an assault, any attack randomly in the city.
With the drug violence escalating, young people trying to better their lives are losing them instead. Don Teague, CBS News, El Paso.
Now, guarding the Mexican border is, of course, critically important to our national security, but there just are not enough agents to patrol the entire 2,000-mile stretch. So Homeland Security is now using a new tool that's been very effective overseas. Bob Orr got a rare look at how it works.
From 4 miles up, this is what smuggling looks like along the Mexican border. Illegal immigrants sneaking through the brush, a drug-running ultralight airplane heading towards Tucson, a Black Hawk helicopter corralling a group of border crossers, all seen by a Predator remote-controlled aircraft armed with high-powered cameras.
Well, the Predator's going to take off from here at Fort Huachuca.
Dave Gasho runs the Predators for U.S. Customs and Border Protection at a barren base in Arizona.
Okay, Omaha 10 is clear.
Pilots fly the planes from a trailer on the tarmac.
Most people coming across the border are either migrants or drug smugglers. We don't know who they are. They could be terrorists. They could people have intentions of harm against the United States.
Predators are best known for tracking and killing terrorists in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Impact.
Here on the U.S. border, they are used strictly for surveillance.
Oh, they're easily more than 5 miles that direction at 19,000 feet.
We spoke with Gasho as the Predator watched from above.
And I'm pretty sure they'll be able to tell that you're wearing a blue shirt, tan slacks. I'm in a flight suit with a black hat.
They can see all of that.
They can see all that.
So if we were trying to cross the border and we were trying to sneak our way across, we'd be pretty plainly visible.
That's correct. We'd already be working on putting agents in position to intercept you.
Policing this long 2,000-mile border with Mexico is more than a full-time job for some 17,000 Border Patrol agents. But the Predators flying 4 miles above help shrink that challenge. They're able to see miles down the road and miles into Mexico.
They should go under the fence.
For agents like Colleen Agel, the Predator serves as high-tech backup.
They can make a rapid identification and classification of what exactly is there so that we know what type of law enforcement response we need to make.
3 of the aircraft fly along the Mexican border, 2 patrol the Canadian border, and 1 cruises over the Caribbean. In the last 5 years, the Department of Homeland Security says Predators have netted 40,000 pounds of drugs and nabbed 7,000 illegal immigrants.
We are expanding the manpower resources.
Gasho wants more pilots to keep the Predators flying around the clock, claiming nothing else provides this kind of immediate intelligence.
My boss in Washington, D.C. can log on and say, what are we looking at right now?
So you could feed this picture in real time to the command center?
Yes.
The program is expensive. Each Predator costs around $18 million, and the aircraft has limits. They're only cleared to fly inside a narrow zone along the border and can't fly at all in bad weather. Still, to Gasho, the air fleet is essential.
This is sovereign U.S. soil, and I think we need to defend it as such.
And Congress is sold. A 4th Predator is on its way to the Mexican border. Bob Orr, CBS News, Fort Huachuca, Arizona.
Overseas, President Obama finally made it to Indonesia after postponing a visit to his one-time home on 3 different occasions. Today, he flew from India to Jakarta, the second of 4 nations he'll visit on his Asian trip. But he has to cut it short so Air Force One can avoid the ash cloud from the Mount Merapi volcano that's closing in on Jakarta. Our chief White House correspondent Chip Reed is traveling with the president.
The president arrived in Jakarta today for a brief visit that's part diplomacy, part homecoming.
When you visit a place that you spent time in as a child, as president, it's a little disorienting.
The future president lived here with his mother, his Indonesian stepfather, and half-sister from the time he was 6 years old until he was 10 when he returned to Hawaii. He attended 2 schools here, one Roman Catholic for about 3 years, then for 1 year a state school where most students were Muslims. His headmaster at the time remembers young Barry, as he was known then, very well.
Place of birth, Honolulu, August 4, 1961. The nationality, Indonesia, and then religion, Islam.
He identified himself as a Muslim because that was his stepfather's religion, school officials say, but it has led some to suggest erroneously that the president is a Muslim, even though he's been a practicing Christian for decades. Indonesia has more Muslims, 206 million, than any other nation in the world. That's 13% of the global Muslim population. The president says it's changed dramatically since he lived here.
I barely recognized it.
Then it was ruled by an autocrat. Today, it's a fledgling democracy. And in a speech later tonight, the president will cite Indonesia as a model for the world, a Muslim nation that is moderate and tolerant. He'll again reach out to the Muslim world, insisting that the U.S. is not at war with Islam, but with violent extremists who have corrupted a great religion. The president was forced to cancel some events here because a giant cloud of ash from a nearby volcano is moving toward Jakarta. And for safety reasons, Air Force One must be in the air before it arrives.
The president says he's disappointed his stay here in Indonesia had to be so short, but he promises to return next year for an international conference, and he says he will bring the family. Katie?
Chip Reed. Chip, thanks very much. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, in a country torn apart by war, she provides a glimmer of hope. But up next, staggering new figures about African American males and how they're falling behind. Equal opportunity is one of this country's most cherished ideals, but too often it's been out of reach for one group of Americans, black males. And a sweeping education study out today may show why. It found that African American males languish at the very bottom of their class every step of the way. Bill Whitaker shows us why this is a problem for all of us in tonight's Reading, Writing, and Reform.
The California Academy of Mathematics and Science in South LA is one of the top high schools in the country, and senior Daniel Caesar is one of the top students. A average, ambitious, he wants to be a psychiatrist.
I'm looking at Berkeley and Stanford as my top schools.
But a troubling sign of the times, achieving black male students like Daniel are increasingly rare in American schools.
The overall academic achievement of African American males was appallingly low, not only in cities, but nationwide.
By 4th grade, only 12% of black male students read at or above grade level, while 38% of white males do. By 8th grade, it falls to just 9% of black males, 33% for whites. Black male students are almost twice as likely as white males to drop out of school, and in some big American cities, the dropout rate is around 50%. In some South LA neighborhoods, this seems more common than this.
Black males now make up only 5% of the college enrollment nationally, but 36% of the prison population.
Researchers say this isn't just a crisis affecting African Americans. This crisis affects all Americans. Dropouts cost taxpayers more than $8 billion annually in public assistance programs like food stamps. It costs more than $25,000 to incarcerate an inmate for a year, but only about $14,000 a year for a student to attend community college. Researchers call these dismal numbers a call to action for scholars across the country to study this problem and come up with real solutions.
The problem can't be quarantined. It's not as if the problems of black males will stay in black communities. These things metastasize across the body politic. They spread out like a cancerous cell, and they begin to impact and affect others.
How many of you are going to go to college?
Daniel and others in the self-proclaimed nerd herd at Cam High in South LA plan to beat the odds.
I just push myself to make sure that I get there and that the generation behind me can look up to people like me.
Hoping to reverse this pattern of failure. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
In Salt Lake City, more dramatic testimony today at the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping trial. Smart told the jury how police missed a chance to rescue her several months after she was taken. She testified that she and the accused, Brian Mitchell, were once approached by an officer who said he was searching for Elizabeth Smart. She was wearing a heavy veil over her face and was too afraid to speak up. Mitchell told the officer the veil was required for religious modesty and convinced him to let them go. Smart was 14 when she was snatched from her bedroom in 2002. She was finally discovered 9 months later. Mitchell could face life in prison if convicted. And an update now on a story we reported last month. Wanted posters began popping up in North Carolina, targeting doctors who perform abortions. The doctors told us they feared for their safety. Today, a pastor, Flip Benham, was convicted of harassment for distributing the posters. He was sentenced to 2 years probation. Benham plans to appeal, claiming free speech. And coming up next, they went on a cruise, but instead of a vacation, they ended up stranded at sea. They signed up for a cruise, but they got an adventure they didn't sign up for. A fire in the engine room of the Carnival Splendor left 4,500 passengers and crew stranded in the ocean 200 miles south of San Diego. The power is out. No hot water or air conditioning. They did, however, get the toilets working again. An aircraft carrier delivered food. Tugboats will tow it to Mexico tomorrow. The unlucky passengers will get their money back and a free cruise. From the high seas to America's highways, the NTSB is holding a 2-day conference in Washington on older drivers for good reason. Within 15 years, more than 1 in 5 licensed drivers will be 65 or older. And research shows deadly crashes skyrocket for drivers over the age of 75. Transportation officials say it's important to plan now by designing smarter cars and better roads to make it safer for older drivers. In Dallas today, President Bush kicked off his book tour at a bookstore not far from his home. Some people waited 18 hours to have the former president sign their copy of the book called Decision Points. And the store sold more than 2,000 copies by 11 this morning. You may question the safety of going alligator hunting, especially when they come as big as this. A gator that measured 14 feet long, a record in Florida. It dragged the hunter and his boat around Lake Washington for 45 minutes before dying. The man who caught the 654-pound gator does this for fun. Quite a hobby. And coming up next, a glamorous night for 3 real heroes. Finally tonight, for 2 decades, Glamour magazine has presented awards to its Women of the Year, women who have achieved great things and inspired others. And Michelle Miller tells us this year's list includes 3 of the strongest women you'll ever meet.
It's a star-studded event, this year honoring celebrities, activists, and athletes.
We've celebrated the most famous and accomplished women in the world, but the winners who people tell us they're the most moved by year after year are the women who they'd never heard of before.
Women like 63-year-old Dr. Hawa Abdi and her 2 daughters, Deco and Amina, from Somalia.
In war-torn Somalia, they live in daily fear of rape, of death, and bands of rebels who ravage without warning.
In 1991, Dr. Abdi found herself in the middle of a civil war. Armed militia had taken over the capital of Mogadishu.
It was a disaster, but it happened.
Hundreds of thousands of innocent people were forced into the countryside, where Dr. Abdi owns a nearby farm.
Now 90,000 people at the camp.
Much more than a refugee camp. It's 200 acres where people farm, learn, and raise their families. You've given your land away.
Yes, and the water to drink because we have a well.
She built a hospital where she and her daughters, also trained physicians, practice medicine. You must be extremely proud of your mother.
I am, but she scares me sometimes. She's so brave.
Last May, Dr. Abdi was held hostage for a week by al-Qaeda-linked militants, furious that a woman had become a leader to so many.
I remain, and I say, you want to kill me, please? No problem. Someday I have to die.
After destroying her hospital and killing at least 20 children, the militants let her go.
And these are women who don't have to do this. They could leave their country. They could live peaceful, safe lives where they're not being threatened by militants every hour of every day, but they refuse.
We are asking you, American population and all over the world, to help us.
They join a sisterhood of women recognized over the last 2 decades, women who've changed minds and changed lives, and encourage others all over the world to follow their lead. Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.